You do not have to eliminate carbohydrates to improve your blood sugar. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that better glucose control only comes from restriction. Cut this out. Stop eating that. Fear fruit. Fear rice. Fear every carb on your plate. That approach might create short-term changes for some people, but for most, it becomes exhausting, unsustainable, and honestly, unnecessary. Because the truth is, blood sugar is not just about how much carbohydrate you eat, it is about what you eat with it, how quickly it is absorbed, how inflamed your body is, and how sensitive your cells are to insulin in the first place. And after years of working with patients struggling with high fasting sugars, a 1C numbers creeping up, and the constant fear of what's next, I can tell you this. Some of the fastest improvements happen not when people starve themselves, but when they start adding the right foods. Foods that slow glucose absorption. Foods that reduce inflammation. Foods that help your cells respond to insulin more efficiently. Foods that support the body instead of fighting it. I have seen people bring down their fasting numbers, flatten their after-meal spikes, improve their energy, reduce cravings, and in some cases work with their doctors to lower medication needs over time, all by making strategic changes like the ones we are about to talk about. So in this video, I am going to walk you through 10 foods that can help improve insulin sensitivity and support healthier blood sugar levels naturally, not by starving you, not by making you afraid of food, and not by asking you to give up everything you enjoy. These foods work because they improve the chemistry underneath the problem, and that is what most people are never taught. Before we jump in, do me a quick favor. If you like videos that explain why your body is doing what it is doing, instead of just throwing generic advice at you, hit subscribe, give this video a like, and leave me a comment with your fasting blood sugar this week. I read those comments and they genuinely help shape what I make next. All right, let's get into it. First, let's make one thing simple. High blood sugar does not begin with sugar alone. It usually starts upstream with insulin. Insulin is the hormone that helps move glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells, where it can actually be used for energy. You can think of insulin as a key, and the cell as a locked door. When everything is working properly, insulin knocks, the door opens, and glucose goes inside. But when someone spends years riding the blood sugar roller coaster, high sugar, high insulin, cravings, crashes, stress, poor sleep, inflammation, the cells gradually stop responding the way they should. The door becomes harder to open. Insulin keeps knocking, but the cell is no longer listening very well. That is insulin resistance. And once that starts, the pancreas has to make more and more insulin just to get the same job done. Over time, blood sugar starts climbing, fasting numbers rise, after-meal spikes get worse, weight becomes harder to lose, energy gets more unstable, and the whole system becomes more strained. So the real goal is not just eat less sugar. The goal is to improve the environment that insulin has to work in. That means doing 3 things. Number 1, slowing down how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream. Number 2, reducing the inflammation that interferes with insulin signaling. Number 3, improving how responsive your cells are to insulin at the receptor level. Every food on this list helps with one or more of those jobs. And no, you do not need to start all 10 tomorrow. That is not how real change works. Add them gradually, stack the benefits, and let your body start responding. Let's start with the first one. 1. Fenugreek seeds. If you have never used fenugreek before, do not skip past this one just because it sounds unfamiliar. These little amber-colored seeds are one of the most underappreciated tools for blood sugar support, and they are inexpensive, easy to find, and surprisingly powerful. Fenugreek works largely because it is rich in a type of soluble fiber. When that fiber mixes with fluid, it forms a thick gel-like texture in the digestive tract. That slows down how quickly food leaves the stomach and how quickly carbohydrates are broken down and absorbed. That matters because the slower glucose enters the blood, the less dramatic the spike. And the less dramatic the spike, the less insulin your body has to release in a panic. Fenugreek also contains plant compounds that may support insulin function and help improve how the body handles glucose after meals. So this is not just about digestion, it is also about response. The people who benefit most from fenugreek are often those with high fasting sugars, strong carb cravings, or noticeable spikes after breakfast. It is one of those foods that can quietly change the curve without feeling dramatic. The simplest way to use it is to soak 1 teaspoon of whole fenugreek seeds in water overnight. In the morning, drink the water and chew the softened seeds before breakfast. If the taste is too strong or slightly bitter for you, you can grind the seeds and mix a small amount into yogurt, eggs, or even a savory smoothie. Start small. This is a fiber-rich food, and your gut may need a few days to adjust. 2. Ceylon, cinnamon. Next is cinnamon, but not just any cinnamon. Most people have cinnamon sitting in their kitchen already, but the type matters. The common version sold in many grocery stores is cassia cinnamon, and while it is widely used, it contains more coumarin, which is not ideal in large amounts over time. The type I prefer people use regularly is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon. Now, why does cinnamon help? Because it contains plant compounds called polyphenols that appear to support insulin sensitivity. In practical terms, cinnamon may help your cells respond better to insulin, improve glucose uptake, and slightly slow gastric emptying after meals. And that is the key pattern you will keep hearing in this video. When food moves more slowly and insulin works more efficiently, blood sugar becomes more stable. Cinnamon is one of the easiest additions because it does not require changing your whole routine. You can add a 1/4 teaspoon to coffee, oatmeal, plain yogurt, chia pudding, or a smoothie. It works especially well alongside a carbohydrate-containing meal, which is when you want that extra metabolic support. This is one of those small, hinge big door habits. Tiny change, real benefit. 3. Broccoli sprouts. Now I want you to pay very close attention to this one because it is probably the most overlooked food on the entire list. Not broccoli, broccoli sprouts. Those little 3 to 5 day old sprouts contain a compound called sulforaphane, and broccoli sprouts contain dramatically more of it than mature broccoli. Sulforaphane has been studied for its ability to support detoxification pathways, reduce oxidative stress, and, most relevant here, help regulate the liver's glucose output. That matters because a lot of people assume high blood sugar only comes from what they eat, but your liver also plays a major role. It can release glucose into the bloodstream, especially overnight and in the early morning hours. When someone is insulin resistant, the liver often releases more glucose than it should. That is why so many people wake up with a high fasting number even when they did not eat anything all night. Broccoli sprouts may help calm that process down. This is especially helpful for the person who says, "My sugars are highest in the morning, and I do not even understand why." That is often a liver signaling problem, not just a dinner problem. Use a small handful on salads, sandwiches, wraps, or bowls. Keep them mostly raw if you can, because too much heat can reduce the active compounds. If you want one of the strongest food-based ways to support fasting glucose, this one deserves your attention. 4. Avocado. Number 4 is avocado, and this one is so useful because it fits naturally into everyday meals. People sometimes avoid avocado because they focus only on calories or fat, but metabolically, avocado is one of the friendliest foods you can put beside a carbohydrate. Why? Because it contains fiber and monounsaturated fat, and that combination slows digestion, slows gastric emptying, and softens the rise in blood sugar after a meal. Think about what happens when someone eats plain toast, white rice, or crackers by themselves. Those foods are rapidly broken down, glucose enters the blood quickly, insulin has to surge, and the person often gets hungry again soon after. Now take that same meal and add half an avocado. Suddenly the absorption slows down, the glucose curve becomes gentler, satiety improves, cravings later in the day often decrease, the meal becomes more stable. And there is another benefit. Monounsaturated fats have been associated with better insulin sensitivity in many people. So avocado is not just slowing absorption, it is also helping improve the overall metabolic environment. Half an avocado a day is a great practical target. Put it on eggs, mash it onto whole grain toast, add it to lentils, pair it with rice and beans, or slice it into a lunch bowl. Anytime you are eating starch, avocado can act like a brake pedal. 5. Chia seeds. Next up, chia seeds. Tiny seeds. Big effect. If you have ever watched chia seeds sit in liquid and transform into a gel, you have already seen exactly why they help with blood sugar. Like fenugreek, chia is rich in soluble fiber. Once hydrated, that fiber thickens and slows the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. That means instead of blood sugar rising quickly and crashing hard, you get a slower, steadier release. And that matters not just for glucose, but for energy, cravings, and hunger control. Because one of the most destructive patterns for metabolic health is the spike crash snack repeat cycle. Stable blood sugar leads to more stable appetite. Chia seeds also provide plant omega-3 fats, which can support lower inflammation over time. And since chronic low-grade inflammation is a major contributor to insulin resistance, this gives chia a second mechanism of action beyond fiber alone. A very easy way to use chia is 1 to 2 tablespoons per day. Mix it into yogurt, stir it into oatmeal, add it to a smoothie, or make a simple chia pudding with unsweetened milk, cinnamon, and berries. You can even put it in water with a squeeze of lemon and let it sit for 10 minutes before drinking. Just remember, when you increase fiber, increase fluids too. Fiber works best when it has enough water to do its job. 6. Fatty fish. Now we move from slowing sugar absorption to addressing a deeper issue: inflammation. Because for many people, insulin resistance is not just a carb problem, it is also an inflammation problem. Chronic inflammation disrupts insulin signaling. It changes how cell membranes behave. It interferes with receptor function. It makes the whole system less responsive. So if you want better blood sugar, you have to think beyond glucose and start thinking about the terrain insulin is operating in. That is where fatty fish comes in. Salmon, sardines, mackerel, and herring are rich in EPA and DHA, two omega-3 fats that are among the most powerful anti-inflammatory nutrients we can get from food. These fats help support healthier cell membranes, calmer inflammatory signaling, and better metabolic flexibility. Here is what that means in real life. People who eat fatty fish regularly often experience steadier energy, better appetite regulation, improved triglycerides, lower inflammation, and in many cases, more stable blood sugar patterns over time. This is not an overnight miracle food. This is a foundational food. It helps repair the environment. Aim for 2 servings per week. Fresh, frozen, grilled, baked, canned, it all counts. Canned sardines and mackerel are especially budget-friendly and incredibly nutrient-dense. If someone tells me they want the most nutrition for the least money, fatty fish is always near the top of the list. 7. Walnuts. Speaking of helpful fats, number 7 is walnuts. Walnuts are one of my favorite strategic snacks for people with blood sugar issues because they do several things at once. They provide healthy fats, fiber, and a little protein, which helps slow the glucose response when eaten alongside or instead of higher carb snack foods. They also contain polyphenols and plant omega-3 fats that support vascular and metabolic health. And vascular health matters here more than people realize. High blood sugar damages blood vessels early. Long before a person develops severe complications, there are often already changes happening in the lining of the blood vessels. So when a food supports both blood sugar stability and vascular health, it earns extra credit. Walnuts are especially useful in the afternoon because that is when many people reach for something quick: crackers, cookies, sweet bars, chips, and end up creating the exact spike and crash cycle they are trying to escape. A small handful of walnuts can change that entire pattern. About 7 to 10 walnut halves, or roughly a quarter cup, is plenty. Keep them plain when possible, not candied, not sugar glazed, not coated in syrup. The goal is to replace processed snacks, not stack walnuts on top of them and hope for a miracle. 8. Eggs. Number 8 is eggs, whole eggs, not just egg whites. For years, people were taught to fear the yolk and build breakfast around cereal, toast, granola, muffins, or juice instead. And for many blood sugar problems, that advice backfired badly. A whole egg is mostly protein and fat, with virtually no carbohydrate. That means eggs have a minimal direct impact on blood sugar. But the real value of eggs is not just what they do at breakfast, it is what they do to the rest of the day. This is where the second meal effect comes in. When you start the day with a protein-rich breakfast instead of a refined carb breakfast, your glucose is often more stable, not just after breakfast, but into lunch, and sometimes beyond. Appetite becomes easier to manage. Cravings go down. Energy feels steadier. That mid-morning hunt for something sweet often disappears. And this is one of the fastest swaps people can make. 2 or 3 eggs in the morning, maybe with spinach, mushrooms, onions, herbs, or leftover vegetables, plus half an avocado on the side, that is a completely different metabolic start to the day than cereal and toast. If someone tells me their mornings are their worst numbers and their afternoons are full of cravings, breakfast is often where I start. 9. Apple cider vinegar. Now we get to one of the fastest acting tools on the list, apple cider vinegar. This is not magic, it is chemistry. The active component here is acetic acid, and it appears to help by slowing stomach emptying and improving how the body handles glucose after a meal. In simple terms, vinegar can make a carb-containing meal hit more slowly and sometimes more gently. That can make a real difference on a glucose meter. If you want a practical way to test a food-based strategy and actually see it in your numbers, this is one of the easiest. Many people notice that their after-meal rise is flatter when they use vinegar before a starch-heavy meal. The simplest method is 1 tablespoon diluted in a full glass of water, taken about 10 to 15 minutes before a meal that contains carbohydrates. And please note the word diluted. Do not drink vinegar straight, it is harsh on the throat and hard on tooth enamel. Also, an important safety note. If you are on insulin or blood sugar lowering medication, especially medications that can cause lows, talk with your clinician and monitor your readings. When food strategies start working, your numbers can shift faster than expected and medication needs may change. 10. Lentils. And now the final food on the list is the one that proves the whole point of this video, lentils. Because lentils are a carbohydrate, and yet for many people they support better blood sugar control. Why? Because not all carbohydrates behave the same way. Lentils contain fiber, resistant starch, and plant protein. That combination slows digestion, slows absorption, and creates a much more gradual release of glucose compared with refined starches like white bread, white rice, or sugary snacks. So instead of causing a fast spike, lentils tend to create a steadier curve. They also improve satiety, which means you are less likely to graze, snack, or overeat later because your meal actually held you. Lentils can also contribute to the second meal effect, meaning a balanced lentil-based lunch may help create more stable numbers into the evening. That is why swapping a fast starch for a slower one can make such a big difference. Not every carb is your enemy. Some carbs come packaged in a way that your metabolism handles beautifully. A half cup to 1 cup of cooked lentils a few times a week is a great place to start. Use them in soup, stew, curry, salad, or as a side instead of a refined starch. Add olive oil, vegetables, herbs, maybe a little vinegar, and you have turned a simple food into a metabolic tool. Now let me pull all 10 of these together. If you look closely, these foods are not random. They are all solving a piece of the same puzzle. Fenugreek and chia slow absorption with fiber. Cinnamon and vinegar help improve the glucose response around meals. Broccoli sprouts support the liver side of fasting sugar. Avocado, walnuts, and eggs stabilize meals and reduce the blood sugar roller coaster. Fatty fish and chia help calm inflammation. Lentils prove that the right carbohydrate can actually improve control instead of wrecking it. This is why simply cutting carbs often fails in the long run, because if you never fix the underlying insulin resistance, if you never improve receptor sensitivity, reduce inflammation, support the liver, and stabilize digestion, then you are just managing symptoms by force. The moment life gets stressful or the diet becomes unsustainable, the old pattern comes back. But when you improve the system underneath the numbers, the body starts working with you again. Let me give you a real-world example. I had a woman in her early 60s, I will call her Donna, who came in deeply discouraged. Her fasting sugars were consistently high. She felt like no matter what she did, her mornings were bad, her cravings were strong, and every appointment seemed to end with the possibility of needing more medication. What changed things for her was not starving herself. It was building meals that worked better. She replaced her typical high-carb breakfast with eggs and avocado. She added vinegar before her heavier meals. She started using cinnamon daily. She swapped some refined starches for lentils. She added walnuts instead of sweet afternoon snacks. She included fatty fish during the week. And she started adding sprouts to lunch. Within a relatively short period, her numbers began to stabilize. Her cravings improved. Her energy improved. Her fasting sugars started moving in the right direction. Over time, and importantly, in coordination with her own doctor, she was able to improve enough that the conversation shifted from, What more do we add to what may no longer be necessary? That is the power of changing the terrain. Now, let me be very clear about something. These foods are powerful, but they are not a reason to stop medication on your own. If you are on insulin, sulfonylureas, or any medication that can lower blood sugar significantly, you need to monitor carefully and work with your physician. As insulin sensitivity improves, medication needs can change. That is a good problem, but it still needs supervision. So do this wisely. Now, if you want a simple action plan, here is what I would tell you to do first. Tomorrow morning, swap a high sugar breakfast for 2 or 3 eggs and half an avocado. Tonight, soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds so they are ready in the morning. Pick up Ceylon cinnamon and start using about a 1/4 teaspoon a day. Before your biggest carb-heavy meal, try 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and water about 10 to 15 minutes beforehand. And this week, replace a fast starch with lentils at least 2 times and get fatty fish onto your menu at least twice. That is enough. You do not need a perfect diet. You need momentum. Then over the next 1 to 2 weeks, start layering in the others: chia, walnuts, broccoli sprouts, and the rest. Let the strategy build, because sustainable blood sugar improvement does not come from punishment. It comes from consistency. It comes from meals that reduce stress on the body instead of adding to it. And it comes from understanding that your body is not broken. It is responding to the signals it has been given. Change the signals and the numbers often start to change too. And here's one more thing I want to leave you with. A lot of people focus only on what happens after they eat, but some of the most frustrating blood sugar problems show up before breakfast. That high morning glucose reading that makes no sense can be tied to how the liver releases glucose overnight, how stress hormones behave while you sleep, and how insulin resistance affects that whole process. So if your biggest struggle is waking up with high blood sugar, even when you ate well the day before, that is the next piece to learn. Because once you understand what your liver is doing overnight, you can finally stop guessing and start fixing the right problem. If this video helped you, subscribe, hit like, and tell me in the comments which one of these 10 foods you are going to add first. And if you know someone who is scared of carbs, scared of their numbers, or convinced they have to live on restriction forever, send this to them. Sometimes the body changes fastest when you stop taking everything away and start giving it what it has been missing. I will see you in the next video.